Perfect. So welcome again to our webinar series. This is, I believe, our final scheduled webinar for now. That doesn't mean we won't do more moving forward because there's still a lot of functionality to cover. But the main thing for us was to cover up until schools are able to take attendance. And what we'll do is make an assessment as to how far schools have gotten, probably sometime over the next few days, and then decide if we need to do potentially some kind of refresher webinar, or if, we can move forward with other functionalities. And of course, we're gonna get some feedback from you guys. So today, I believe after our webinar series, we'll share a feedback form so we can understand how well everybody understood the things we covered in our webinar so far. Once again, so that if we need to revisit something or explain it differently or hash it out a little bit more, then that can be done. And also to gauge interest as to what the next features are that everybody's eager to learn about. And so we can set up our subsequent webinars to cover the things that you're most interested in getting done through the system, right? That being said, by the end of this webinar series, what we're hoping to have achieved is, once again, the schools are set up. You have your students enrolled. You have, teachers assigned and everything. Transfer teachers will be brought in as soon as possible. And then once they're in, then, all your teachers should be assigned. Your students should be assigned, created if you need to create them. In their subjects, in their classrooms. Teachers should be able to log in, take their attendance. We're gonna soon address how we want to get user credentials out for students and parents. I mentioned in the chat the easiest way is to just assign an email address to their profile and send the welcome email, of course. But if we need to figure out alternative ways to do that, we do have a couple ways to do it, but we'll have to consult with the ministry and figure out what the best rollout is for the schools. But the idea is, at the end of this webinar, the schools should be equipped to be taking attendance every day. And that should, hopefully everybody gets done with that. The longer it takes, the more you may have to backfill, particularly the teachers log in, they'll have to backfill a couple of days, right? So ideally, we get you there as soon as possible. The attendance gets captured and the teachers can start creating assignments. Now, they can be creating assignments, even the advanced ones like we covered yesterday. But even if they're not creating more advanced assignments, at the very least, the report should be configured and the teachers can capture their grades. So once they're taking attendance, capturing grades, you get to the end of the term, you basically have some of the key pieces for a report. Now, that's where schools branch off a little bit, really case by case, depending on what each school wants to capture. We may have to dedicate some time. I do still have to re-record, as I mentioned yesterday, one of the videos on how to configure the report cards. I'll re-record that probably most likely over the weekend and send that out. So the schools start fine-tuning things to meet your specific needs as an institution, right? Some people may, like I said, want to capture extracurricular activities because those show up on a report. Others may want to tap into behavioral stuff, right? And capture things like merits and demerits, right? So that's where, the system is very powerful because there's a lot of bells and whistles and a lot of customizability so that your instance really feels like your school. Up until the point of capturing attendance, it's sort of the same streamlined process everybody has to take. But after that, it's your world to play in. So in keeping with that, I just wanted to quickly point out again, I remind everybody, whether you're with us live or you're joining in and watching the videos, first things first, please come to the tracker. I'll reshare the link and drop a message in our WhatsApp chat. And let's get up to speed with how far you are along the process. At the very least, we want all our schools to be at least all checked off by column L, right? So the only thing missing would be the transfer teachers. And at this point, you're pretty much ready to take attendance. Then the next sort of mindset shift for an ambassador is rather than executing and implementing, you're just focusing on ensuring, really with your principal, ensuring that the teachers are actually taking attendance. We had some questions raised about devices. You can access SmartTerm, as I showed in the attendance webinar, even from any smartphone. So if you have an Android phone or iPhone, any phone that you can just get Chrome browser on, which is what we recommend, you can log into SmartTerm using your credentials and you can take attendance, right? So we're encouraging you to get to that point. Let's get the attendance down. And that's how we figure out and tackle things moving forward, right? We get everybody to the point of attendance, then we'll look at what's next. So I'm encouraging everybody again. Our numbers are looking good. We have a lot of schools, actually logged in and checking things. Dixie and her team has been checking in with the schools as well. So we're progressing on getting schools to actually, get into the system and start taking some of their data. And at this point, we actually have 4 schools where the ambassadors are actually seeing the attendance summaries across the schools, which means that teachers have started taking attendance. The numbers are great for something that we've executed in a matter of like a couple of weeks, right? But we want to get everything up to 100%. That's the target. We're going to keep pushing until we do that. And then as soon as we're there, we're going to switch gears and focus on, let's get the nicest looking reports out for our students and parents to be able to access for the end of the term. So that's just to kind of once again drive back the direction of where we're going with all this. All right, so I'm over in my SmartTerm Trainer portal. Today we're going to be focusing specifically on just using the classroom module and the subject module. Yesterday, I did a bit more of a deep dive into something specific for the classrooms, or sorry, the subjects module, which was creating assignments. If you haven't seen that recording, go ahead and look at the webinar recordings. We've been sharing the links in the chat. Probably after today, I'll do one message that has all the webinar links or something, and then just drop that back in the chat so that you can follow along with all our webinars from start to end, and be able to, do whatever is necessary to get your school up and running, answer some questions. And of course, outside of that, we have our chat where we're getting through the questions, we're addressing things, and, more and more people are getting more and more engaged. Like I said, we have a couple wonderful champions who are actually answering questions for us. They're leaders, and we love that. We love seeing that, right? So to get started off, of course, like I've been saying all this week, to start using some of this functionality, we're presuming that you got through the first steps of the process, which is ensuring that, you're in the current term and your classrooms are created, your subjects are created, student enrollments are in the right place, and the teachers are assigned to their classrooms and subjects. And so what we're going to look at today is, okay, we'll have all of that. As a teacher, I'm taking attendance. Maybe, we even have 1 or 2 schools mentioned that they got students in the system. Well, what next? How do we start driving some of the value that a system like this can give? And that's, using the assignments, which I mentioned, that I covered yesterday, to tie in with the grade books, which gets us to an end of term report, but also to start using our classrooms and our subjects. And that will give us, a lot more. When our students log in, they will be in a living, breathing school where conversations are happening, assignments are being given, content is being posted. And that's how you can start to, depending on your teaching style, either supplement or really just enhance your teaching experience and the learning experience for the students in your classroom, right? So we assume we have everything set up. We come here and you'll see that there are classrooms and their subjects, right? Now, as I showed yesterday, when I logged in as a teacher will only see their classroom, right? If they're a class teacher. If they're not a class teacher, they won't see anything in classrooms because they're not assigned to a classroom. But if they're not a class teacher, chances are they're a specialty subject teacher. And so when they come to the subjects module, they will just see their subjects. If you're the class teacher, the homeroom teacher, you probably still teach subjects. And so you'll also see subjects in the subjects module. Only the ones that you teach, those will be assigned to you, right? So just to cover, you know, what a classroom is really meant to be. A classroom is just a collective group of students. Depending on if you're a traditional school, chances are you have one classroom or two classrooms or three classrooms per grade level. So the breakdown is really just a group of students learning at a grade level, right? The exception here is if you're maybe one of the special needs schools or you have some kind of special programs where you might have a classroom that is not just students from one grade, but a mixed group of grades. Either way, it doesn't matter to the system. It's a collective group of students, right? And this is their homeroom. So in the classrooms module, you will have a discussion board, you'll have a photo wall, you'll have a calendar, which if you fill out and add events here, then the calendar module will fill out as well. You have resources where you can post things that don't tie to a specific subject. These are just general resources. For example, you may want to do a field trip at the school and there's a waiver or some kind of permission slip that needs to be shared with every student in the classroom, right? You just post that here. It doesn't tie to a specific subject. You just post the form and you say, hey, students, please fill out your form and then submit it either maybe they can email it to the principal's office or bring it into the administrative office. If you don't do that, then we won't be able to take you on the field trip, right? So things like that you could post here, or maybe you're doing a class party and you want to post a class party list. Those are the kind of resources you post here. You don't have to post anything specific to a subject because each subject has its own resources space, right? There's a students tab here where you see the students in the classroom. There are a couple other pieces here, which, I guess I'll take a moment to stick a pin right now. I mentioned that we have really streamlined the experience. So we're going towards things that build toward tracking attendance and then taking the necessary things to generate a end of term school report. We had a question come up. Somebody was maybe having some trouble with one of the modules. They're using calendar module or something, right? There are many modules that are open here to you. You'll see a lot, and that's just because we assigned everything. But certain modules may need things to be configured a little bit more, right? For example, if you're in the behavior module, then by default, the behavior module is going to be blank, right? Because the admin at the school would have to go in and create different items for the behavior. But once those are in, then a teacher could log in and they can say, okay, I can give a student a detention for this or a merit for that, right? So there are many things like that in the system. We also have skills where you can add in a couple skills, right? We have a leaderboard. We have, surveys and polls. But if you're playing around with the system, we're super excited. We're happy you're playing around with it. We encourage it. Use the system, learn your way through. You'll get a better feel of things. But there may be things here or there that are not configured. And so, like I said, after today's session and we share the feedback form, we'd love to hear what schools are most interested in learning about next, and then we can help you get some of those things configured, right? So just kind of pointing that out, if you were in the classrooms module, you would have a tab there for your calendar, and you can actually start fleshing out what your calendar would look like. So there's an action button and you can add events against classroom or subjects, or if you're an admin, then you can add in a school event, but it may actually require some configuring, right? Even on the configuration side of things. So let me see. Oh, I'm in the wrong one. I'm in report configurations, and yeah, may or may not actually be configured right now, but let me just double check. Right. So yeah, so there are a lot of options, and right now the focus isn't the classrooms, the calendar module, so I don't want to dive too deep into that. But just to answer questions that may have come up that, oh, this thing wasn't working or that thing wasn't working, just hang tight, ask the questions in the chat, of course, so that helps us to gauge what people are interested in learning about next, and we can get you set up. So the reason I brought it up is because there's a calendar tab here, and you may add events against your calendar. And then, of course, once you did, they would show up in the calendar module depending on the admin. So let's see, who is the teacher here? grade 1, Andrews Jackson Smith. Calendar. Jackson has some events and they'll show up, right? So the functionality is there. It will be fleshed out. We'll show you how to do that stuff, right? So focusing back on the classrooms module and the subjects module, let me just take a quick glance at okay. Nothing has come up in terms of questions. So as I mentioned, each classroom has its own space and you have several tabs here, right? And we're going to go through each, but before we even do that, let's look at this top panel, right? When you're in a classroom, you actually have the ability to customize your classroom just a little bit, right? So you'll see here that I have a icon for the classroom and I have a banner. So as a teacher, once you're logging in, you will be able to start tweaking some of those things. So here I had a, default icon is this light bulb, but I could come in and I can click change icon and I can put in, a photograph. I think I had like a guitar or something. Yeah, so I think it was a guitar. I click open, click save, and you see my icon updated for the classroom. Likewise, there's a banner. Now, I didn't go ahead and download an image that would actually fit the banner. So just a heads up, when you're getting a banner in, you can look for something that fits the specific dimensions of this banner. But if I came here and there's nothing to remove, I go to change banner. Let me pick a file and let me go for something that's kind of wide, right? And click done. You're going to start to see that it will upload and you see part of my image kind of got captured there. I just took a screenshot of my desktop and that's why you're seeing the Apple icon stuff there, right? So you can tweak your banner, you can put whatever you want to put that will make it feel like it's your own, right? And so the classroom already starts getting a sense of customizability, right? Meet the mom. Okay, let me change this. But the idea is there, right? So you have, you can get your image, you can play around with things a little bit. I'm just playing around with a couple of the different icons that we have and seeing if any of them naturally happen to fit. But of course, you would download something that's wide and short to actually make for a good banner, right? And so you can update that. The other thing there is that we have the ability to click edit. And when you click edit, you'll see a tab here for additional teachers, right? So if you have, I know that there was a question brought up about like relief teachers and set teachers. And, I don't know what each distinction particularly means, but you may have an assistant teacher at the school. So you have a head teacher for that. You guys use head teacher for principal, so let me use a different term. You have a class teacher, the main teacher for the classroom, and then they may have like assistant teachers. And so you can actually add, as long as they're created in the system, you can add in the additional teachers as well, and they will show up here in the system. If for any reason you ever need to do video conferencing, let's say there's a hurricane or something like that, right? And students stay at home, but you want to do your call, you want to do a Zoom call and have a session with your students. There's also a web session button there, and you can put in the link for any pretty much any like video conferencing tool, whatever their join link is. So for example, with Google Meet, it's something like Meet at Google. So then I come here and I'll just copy this link, right? And I can post that there, and I can actually even do video conferencing, right? So when I click the join meeting button, when I click save here, when I click the join meeting button, it actually opens back that meeting link there. So, ideally school is face-to-face, this won't be needed at all, but the capability is there. And of course, if you don't want the join meeting button, you can just turn off the web sessions and it will be gone, right? So you have the ability to customize the banner even for your classrooms and similarly for each subject, right? Now let's focus on the first tab. This is the discussion board. This is where I mentioned yesterday you can post discussions so that the class can see it, right? So you could say something like, hi class, welcome to Christmas term 2023. right? And you go ahead and you click post. I'll actually make a post here. Your students can come on there, they can like it, they can comment it, and you can engage with the students and get a little bit of a, conversation going pretty much, especially with the older students. Now, each classroom, each subject gets its own discussion board, right? So you don't need to post something for math in the home classroom. You just post it in the math discussion board. And so now you have several conversations going on where your students can respond to thoughts or ideas that maybe you didn't get to complete in class. Maybe, for example, you started teaching students about I'm trying to pick a topic that's not super complex but not super easy. Let's say you started teaching them about fractions, right? And you teach them about fractions, you have your curriculum, you're following along with it, but then you go home and you find a funny video about fractions for students in grade 1, right? Fractions for grade 1 song, right? And you find something like that and you say, hey, I definitely want to post it to my students. So I have the fraction song.
This is Rachel.
Right?
Rachel is a science teacher and she is fed up. This is Ryan.
So I come here and say I want to post this song. Well, what you can do is you can actually embed that video into SmartTerm. So what does that mean? Well, here I'm on YouTube, I have the video. I want that to show up here inside my discussion board, right? And I want my students to see it. I come back to the YouTube video, I right click on the YouTube video, and you're gonna see this fourth option here that says copy embed code. I just click that. Right? It copies something. We don't really care. We don't need to care what it copies, but it copies something, right? We'll come back to SmartTerm, right? We'll go to the discussion board and there's a little play icon here. You click on that and then in the source part, you just paste that code that you copied, right? Or you can go to embed if you want to see it a little better, right? You go there and you can do some adjustments here. You don't have to. Just paste it as is, you click save. That pulls the video into SmartTerm and you can say, please watch this video, right? You click post and it posts the video into SmartTerm. So the students can come into the portal, they click play, it plays here within SmartTerm. So you're not sending them to youtube.com for them to fall down a YouTube rabbit hole or anything like that. They just watch the video in here and then they can share their thoughts on the video in here, right? So that's just an interesting way to keep the conversation going. You can also attach files if you wanted to when you're posting. So you click that attach button and it brings up our attachment tool that can to like Google Drive and Google Photos or even local files on your computer, whatever it may be. And you'll be able to just quickly attach and post, and then whatever you post will be in there and students can have the discussion. Now, as I mentioned, each subject gets its own discussion board, so you can have several simultaneous conversations going as well. And you can then look and see, maybe you have one student that's very vocal in the English conversation because that's what interests them. But then you have another student that's very vocal in the math conversation because that's what interests them. And you start to see where people's interest is just from engaging with the content that you share and post, right? So that's the idea of the discussion board. It's to have discussions. You have a photo wall. It's pretty self-explanatory. You can just come here and you can attach photos if you needed to. And then, that's just a special place for photos. Maybe as a classroom, you want to take memories. Particularly, I have a son and he's in kindergarten. And at the kindergarten level, he gets a lot of we get a lot of like pictures from his teacher, like, oh, this is a memory. This happened today. That happened today. We tried this. We tried that, right? So something similar like that. You wanted to post your photos, you can just post your photos here. So you have that photo wall that you can come back to and you can see the memories, and the students would have that as well. They can see it like as they go through the term, they can look back at like sort of like a photographic feed of like how the term went. Of the calendar where you can actually add events against the calendar. And what that means is when you do it from classrooms, then the calendar builder knows that it's for grade 1 Andrew that I'm creating an event. So I go in there and I can choose the name of the event. Maybe it's class party because that's a classroom type event, right? And I say it's a one-time event, and I say it happens on, what's the date today? 21st. So it happens on the 21st, right? Let's say at 6 p.m. 6 p.m. kind of late for class part. Yeah, no. So let's say 3 p.m. 3 p.m. Right, and it ends at 5 p.m. Right? You still have the video conferencing ability, so if somebody's sick at home, they can join on like Zoom or something if you have a computer set up there to stream it, right? Completely optional, up to you guys. And you can go in and you can add the event. And what this will do is like on the calendar for every student that is in this class party will pop up. So if I come back here and I go to let's let it load. I go back here and then I go to the classroom, I would see the event pop up and I would see it against the student, right? Or any student that's in the classroom, I should say. Like any student that is in, oh, okay, there we go. I think I'm trying to do too much with my system, so let me not do that. Okay, so now I have to close this and open it back. Actually, let me go here. Go back to the home page. Let's see. Is everybody? Oh my gosh. I got knocked off. Okay. I'm not sure what's happening here. I seem to have been booted off the internet. Can somebody speak and let me know if you can hear me? Because I'm being told that my internet has chipped out, but I'm not knocked off.
Yes, I can hear you, Seth, but you did go out for like 30 seconds or so.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
All right. So what's the last thing people heard me say? Let's see. Maybe somebody can ask in the Q&A. Yeah, I got booted off for a bit. So okay, I'll just backtrack a little bit. All right. So the last thing, I was looking in the classrooms and we were talking about the discussion board. So we mentioned that and the videos. I believe everything was recorded. So ideally the recording is not disrupted. But we have the photo wall, we have the calendar, we have yeah, so I mentioned that we added a calendar event. I think my internet was good up until then, so I'm just going to assume that that's where we were and move forward from there. Let me go back to the calendar. Oh, internet again. go to this page. Jimmy, you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you, sir.
Okay, thank gosh.
Yeah.
I thought my internet chipped out again. Let me just give me a second. Let me go back to my trainer portal. Let's go back to classrooms. All right, move forward from there. Right. So moving forward, we have our resources tab. And so once we do once we have any resources that we want to add against the classroom. So I mentioned class party a while ago. For example, if we wanted to do a folder here, we could create a folder for classroom, or sorry, like let's call it class party, maybe. And then I have something there. I can add different files into it. So to add files, I can, upload a file if I have an existing file like a PDF or a Word doc or something, or I can create a file, right? So I can say list of items to be brought, right? And Seth bring in KFC, right? We'll go in there and let me just scroll down a little bit. Oh, there we go, save. We can go ahead and we can save it, and it will save the file as a PDF. And the file is there. We can view it. It will allow me to download and anything of the sort. So I have any resources that I wanted to add against the classroom, I can add in there, and I can create folders and all of that, right? Now the students tab we're familiar with because some of us may have had to add or remove students in, but I mentioned earlier that there's some modules that we need to configure a little bit. Well, one such module would be the skills module. So once the skills module, the admins at the school can configure that based on how you want to track points for students. Once you have it configured, then you can come in and assign points, and you'll see that you can give points to a student against their classroom. You can also give them points for a specific subject. So you can create different types of skills, and then those skills will be added against a student. And at the end of the term, you have a leadership board. So you can see the leadership board or leaderboard, sorry. And then you can come here and you can pick the classroom, and you say, okay, the leaderboard for this classroom, this is student I just gave points to, and they have it there, right? Next up is the subjects tab. And so, for subjects, we're looking at linked subjects. This is more common at primary school level and the earlier grades in secondary school, because obviously the upper grades in secondary school, they will have mixed pool classes where students are coming from multiple classrooms. But any linked subjects you have, the students will be right here, and you can see that. Finally, we have the assessments. So we spoke a little bit about the qualitative assessments, so things like social skills and whatnot that we want to capture on the report. And that's, you can add them in against students. You can add against the student's classroom. You can also add in against subject, have subject specific assessments. For example, Spanish may have something for the student's ability to pronounce words, where it's like good, great, excellent, right? And you want to check those things off against the subject. So assessments can be created, and in the assessments tab, they can be assigned to that classroom. So creating them just creates that assessment to exist, but you go into the classroom and the assessments tab to assign the assessment against things. All right. So I'm going to give you guys a couple seconds to ask questions before, well, I'm going to continue, but I'll keep an eye on the questions for the next couple minutes. But let's move on to the subjects, because one of the things you'll find with the SmartTerm system is we try as much as possible to keep the design language, the aesthetics of the different modules similar. So for me to move from a classroom to a subject, it's not a huge leap for me, because when I go into a subject, the look is very similar to a classroom. I just have some additional features. So in the case of a classroom, we have a classwork tab, and yesterday's session we covered all the classwork, how to create the assignments and all that. So I'm not going to go over that, but let's look at the other tabs. So I have a discussion board here. So same kind of thing as the classroom, right? Except what I would post in my discussion board for English grade 1A is things specific to English classroom, right? I see a question from Miss Hunt about the assessments tab. Right. So the reason you're not seeing any domains in the assessments tab is because there's an assessments module here on the left, and those domains actually have to be created first, right? So it's really just a matter of what assessments you want to capture. I guess I can do a quick run through of how to do it now, since we missed it on our video. It was done during the reports configuration video. And let me go over it again. And then when I re-record the reports configuration video, then, you know, I'll still bring it up again. So the assessments have to deal with the qualitative aspects of, you know, assessing a student. So that could be things that are non-academic. So things like social skills the school may capture. The example I made is a student demonstrates good judgment, right? Maybe another kind that we could add is, again, social skills, add something like respects figures of authority. I don't really know what the scale would be, but let's go with basic drop down, and you know, let's change these from excellent, good, and bad to always, most of the time, sometimes, and never, right? And then I'll just leave that as TBD for now, but you can give more of a breakdown of what the title is. And I click save. And so now when I am capturing my social skills in the assessment in the reports module, I'll have a drop down for demonstrates good judgment, right? But when I created it here, and just to backtrack before I move over, I will create a whole other domain now. So let me create a domain. Subject that we're using is English language, but let me see if I can do one for Spanish maybe. So this, so let's say this is Spanish. And then I'll say this is just something that we do at Spanish for all grades, right? And pronunciation. Did I spell that right? I guess so. Yes. Right. Just put TBD, or I could just write back pronunciation, or actually I should say Spanish language, right? And so this is for yes, spoken. This is how I'll create it. Spoken Spanish, right? So that's my domain. It's just a whole domain where, like, I'm going to add in a few qualitative things. You know, I can still create assignments and give tests, and I can give oral tests and all of that. And those have percentages. That's fine. I can do that in Spanish, but I also want to capture something that's graded on a scale. So here I'm saying this is, you know, the oral component of Spanish, right? There's speaking component really. And I want to capture some specific assessments for that. So I created the domain here, and then here I can say, I want to add in different assessments for it. So in their spoken Spanish, maybe I want to do something like grasp of the J sound, right? Because it's like, you know, jefe or whatever, right? And I say excellent, good, bad. Let's just leave that as what it is. And then I'll come in here and I'll put TBD just to have something there, and I click save, right? And then I want to maybe add in another one that I call, like, I don't know, grasp of the double L sound, because it's kind of like a Y, right? But let's make it a little bit more, like, let's just make it different for the sake of being different, right? Sounds almost fluent. I'm making things up here pedagogically. I might not be right, so don't judge me too much. Sounds okay. This is definitely not how we would want to assess our student. Sounds or needs improvement, right? Let's say those are the types. I can create those assessments, and you can see each item can have its own grade and scale. So my JSON thing has like excellent, good, and bad, whereas my double L sound here, I have completely different categories, right? This creates a domain, and then this creates an assessment, right? So now it exists in the system, but the system doesn't necessarily, we have to tell it where that actually applies. So I can now come into a classroom, and here in my classroom, in the domains, I already have an assessment for social skills. It's already there, right? But I wouldn't assign Spanish to my classroom. I'll come into my subjects. I'll have to go to Spanish, right? When I go into Spanish, you don't see assessments here already, but I can go here. I can click edit in Spanish, and in the assignment options, I can enable subject assessments, right? There's another step that also needs to be done, which is when you're in the module configurations, I think you need to turn it on. I think actually assessments is just once it's on, it's on. Right, so once it's on in the module configurations, but in report configurations, you need to come in, and for assessments, you need to have that you want to actually capture subject assessments, right? Or classroom assessments. So you choose some of those configurations, and we'll go over the reports configuration side when I re-record that video and share that. But what we need to do here is a couple different things. So we create the assessment, we assign it to a subject, and then or classroom, and then we make sure it's being captured for our report, right? So what I did here is I actually created the assessment, right? And once the assessments are created here, you don't have to do this every single term, just FYI, right? Once the assessments are created here and you're importing data into the new term, you're able to also import the assessments in, right? Or they might even happen automatically. So they'll just be there, right? So just keeping that, on your radar. You can create these the first time, and then only in subsequent years, if you need to update or change the language or maybe the way you grade it, right? We're always learning. And so there's research in education that might say, hey, the grades for spoken Spanish, what Seth came up with here, this is horrible. We need to change this, right? Sounds almost fluent and sounds okay. And I forgot to add needs improvement. Right? Those are not great categories, right? So we definitely don't want those to be the categories. We're going to change them to something that's way more correct and aligned with how these things should be assessed. And you can come in and you can update it, right? You just come in and you just click on the pencil icon and update it. All right. So we've created the assessments, and now we want to assign them. So I showed you in a classroom, it was already assigned. So for the subject, you go to Spanish, right? You go to the edit icon. You make sure that the assessment is on, right? Capturing subject assessments, and then you'll see an assessments tab here now. So you come to that assessments tab, you add in, spoken Spanish, you click add domain, and now that assessment is being captured for that subject. So that's the assessments tab for you, right? You can add an assessment to any subject. You can add in an assessment to any classroom. And then once you do the report configuration stuff where it's actually being captured, it will show up on an end of term report, right? Just so you see, once it's been created and you're in the reports module and you go to report card, here I see subject assessments, here Spanish grade 1A. The stuff I just made up is in there so the teacher can capture this, right? So grasp of the J sound, excellent. Grasp of the L sound, sounds almost fluent. And I save these things. And I think I enabled that. It should be on the report, but let's double check and make sure here. Oh, I don't remember who I did it for. I did it for Jane Smith. I'll come here, grade 1 Andrew. I do Jane Smith, and I do report for Jane. And yeah, it's there, right? So the things that are captured, they show up on the report, right? And so you can see that the subject assessment is there. You see that the classroom assessment is there. For some reason, when I was demoing that section, I only captured one thing for Jane, but it's there, the thing that was captured, right? So those things will show up on reports. And like I said, that's where it really varies from school to school. There's a lot of functionality, and there is, a lot more that you can do there. I'm seeing a question in regard to pulling students and subjects. After attaching a classroom to a subject, can remove the students who are not taking the subject. We're removing the students from the subject affect the classroom. Removing the students from the subject would not necessarily affect the classroom. However, why would you attach it to the subject if it's not meant to be linked? Because what the system does periodically is that it may, when you refresh certain things somewhere, right, it may check against any classrooms that have linked subjects and then ensure that, that they're synced, basically. If you wanted to just add some students from the subject, don't link it to the classroom, right? Let me pick a subject that's not linked. Oh, I made up one the other day, but I can't remember which one. All right, this one has 0 students, so let's assume this one, right? Let me check, edit. It is not linked to a classroom, right? If I wanted to add the students from a certain classroom, right? Let's say 8 out of the 10 students from the classroom are in this subject, right? When I go to the students tab and click add new, I have the ability to enable a classroom filter. I can filter by classroom. I can say select all, right? Let's say there are 10 students, and then I just unselect the ones or deselect the ones that shouldn't be there, right? And click save. And then it only adds in those 2 students rather than linking it where then anytime the database needs to, update or improve, and it does, kind of quality insurance, right? Quality assurance checks that, are all students in linked classrooms and also in the subjects? No, there's some missing because this person linked the subject, but then they remove the students. Let me add them back in, right? Because the system is smart and it will do things like that to make sure that, linked subjects to classrooms remain, correctly linked and the student lists remain updated. So I wouldn't recommend you link a subject to a classroom unless every single student in the classroom is in that subject, and also unless no students from any other classroom is in that subject. It's there just as a quality of life feature, right? It's just there to make things easy in the situation where you have a classroom and you teach, let's say that classroom has 10 subjects. You don't have to keep adding or removing students from every single subject. You just make your update to the classroom, you add or remove from the classroom, and then all the students pull together. If that's not the situation, if it's not every student in the classroom and only the students in the classroom are in the subjects exactly the same way, don't link it. Just use the lists, right? Just use the filter. There's a select all button, tweak it, and just make sure your lists are correct, but make sure it's unlinked. So let's go back to this, right? Discussion board for the class, for the subject, as I mentioned, is the same. Also, I forgot to mention this, but each subject has its own icon. So you can add in an icon as you see fit, right? Let's make Mr. Poe our icon for our English class because yesterday we were using Mr. Poe a lot. So he's the icon for my English class. And of course, I don't have a good banner, but let me just add in something for the banner. Let's see, choose local file. Do I have a good image for the banner? And let's put in parts of the St. Vincent flag, right? So we have the colors of St. Vincent represented there. And that's my banner, right? I can customize that subject so it just feels like it's my own. The banners, I think, they will even take a GIF. So even moving images can be in there. But you may have to play around with that a little bit. Discussion board is the same. You can embed videos like we mentioned, specific to this subject, of course. You have some little you have tools to edit a little bit. You can also copy and paste from outside, but you know, if you're copying and pasting from a random website, then ensure that like it pastes in correctly. Generally speaking, when we paste in from outside things, we choose the option to paste and match style or paste without formatting, so that if there's weird scripts or text going on in whatever you're copying, it's not there, but it's generally easier just to say something like that, right? Read all of Mr. Poe's poems, right? Made a post there, and then the students can comment on it and they can do whatever. So similar thing for the discussion board. Classwork tab we went over. Similar thing for calendar, except if you create a calendar event against the subject, then of course in the calendar module it will show up specifically for, you know, those subjects. If you do the students tab, then you can assign points specific to the subject. So I see that Jack already has 3 points for his classroom, but he's disruptive in English class, and so I give him a room for improvement point for English class specifically. And so his point went down by 1 because he's disruptive in English. And then when I go over to my leaderboards, I can see that by classroom, Jack is he's at 2 points, and that's nice. But when I come in here for the subjects, I can see that he's not so nice there, and he has some room for improvement. Now I wish I gave him more points because I don't like him just being a -1. All right, going back to my subjects. Here's where it gets a little fancy too. We have the resources tab in the subjects, right? Now you have the drive, the normal drive, just a place to store files. Same kind of thing. You can create folders, so you could actually break up your term into different chapters or modules or whatever, right? And you can add in files specific for that. Students will have access to the drive as well, so things you post in the drive, they can download, right? In the syllabus tab, you can add in your syllabus. So you can upload a file, you can create the file in here, and you can actually build it up based on the file that was there, right? Just 2 places to store things, and I believe students have access to both of these tabs. The lesson plans tab, however, that you don't give access to the students. So this is only visible to teachers, right? And to the admins that have access to be able to see in subjects, right? So generally speaking, lesson plans, that's where you can put in your lesson plans for that subject for that term, right? Now, if you click add file and you click create file, you see that we actually give you a nice little template here, so you can follow along with that template and you can fill things out as you wish. And when you click save, I didn't actually type anything here, but when you click save, it will save as a PDF and you'll have that lesson plan in there, right? I probably didn't like the fact that I didn't give it a name. Yeah, so I didn't like the fact that I did that without giving it a name. Hopefully I didn't make the system too angry. Let me refresh my, okay. So it's not too upset, but you definitely want to give it a name before you save and then fill out things, right? The next thing that you can do is you can use the upload tool, of course, and you can upload any document. I don't need to show that. But the third thing, the cool thing here, is that you can actually generate a lesson plan using AI, right? So any teacher can generate lesson plans using artificial intelligence, right? And so coming in from the subject, the system already knows that this is a lesson plan being created for English, right? So if I came in here and I tried to create a math lesson plan, I think it would say, hey, that doesn't look about right because the subject area is English, right? But, just keep that in mind. It's best practice if you're in English, try to create a lesson plan for English. If you want to create a lesson plan for math, go into math, right? So you give the lesson plan a title, right? So words that make us happy. I don't know, I'm making up something. I'm not an English teacher, guys. But words that make us happy. And so the learning objective is to learn synonyms for happy. Oh, words that describe being happy. Probably more correct, right? I really hope this works, but that might be a topic that you're teaching an English language at grade 1, right? Fingers crossed. And so you choose the title of the lesson plan, you choose the learning objective, and then you have the option of 3 models here, the 5E model, the class model, and then the BOPS model. So you choose a model, right? Let's say we go with the 5E model and you click generate. What the system now does is it knows the subject area already. I believe it knows the grade level already, and you have the lesson plan that you chose and you have the learning objective that you want to achieve, which of course you can ensure is curriculum aligned with whatever the ministry approved curriculum is. So you actually could just copy and paste from the ministry approved curriculum and then have your lesson plan title there and have the system generate your lesson plan for you. All right. So here's a grade 1 English lesson plan, synonyms for happy, right? You have like the materials that you need, and then the 5 E's, you know, there's engage, explore, explain, elaborate, evaluate, and extension. And so you have the you know, steps for each, and then you can tweak this. You just type here and maybe you don't like this second thing here, and you say, you know what, I don't like this, I want to do something else here. So let me tweak that, and I can tweak it, and I can add things. Maybe you don't like the 5E model, and you say, you know what, let me try class. You go back, you just click regenerate, and then the AI generator will regenerate that lesson plan for you, and you get the different objectives here. You can scroll down a little bit to see everything a little better. And once again, you can tweak it, right? You tweak it to your needs, and I don't. All right, you go there and you scroll down to sorry, scroll up to save. I keep saying scroll down, and you click save. And once you're done with it and you hit save, then it saves it as a PDF. So you can't change it after. But words that describe being happy, I click that, and you know, here's my PDF for it, and this is my lesson plan. It's complete there, and you know, I tweaked it with this sentence, so you see that your tweaks actually save, and you have your lesson plan in, right? Easy way to generate some lesson plans. We're hoping it saves teachers a lot of time. Obviously, it's AI, so I wouldn't just generate one and just put it in. I would still read it over, make sure it aligns with the objectives, and make sure, you know, you map it out correctly and tweak it however you want to. But even then, you're not doing it from scratch, right? And once again, this is optional. You're not being forced to use AI generated lesson plans. If you have your existing lesson plans already, just upload them, and then you'll have them in, and they're in the system, right? The last thing, there's some basic analytics. So obviously we don't have assignments, a ton of assignments in there with like average grades and all that. But once you do have all of that stuff in there, then you'll be able to see some basic information about how your students are doing, right? And that pretty much covers the classroom and the subjects modules, right? I went a little bit over time, but that's because I lost internet for a bit. And so just in troubleshooting, you know, we kind of made up that time. Otherwise, we would have been finishing right at 4 on the dot. Okay. I'll you know, obviously share the recording for this as soon as possible. And I look forward to any questions that you might have after the fact. You can share them in the chat. Feel free to ask. And I'm very excited to see people starting to use these modules, right? We're going to get there. There's going to be more and more usage for the different modules. And as you use things more, you'll realize everything kind of connects a little bit, right? In the classroom, you create events, it shows up on the calendar. Once it's on the calendar, then if you log in as a teacher, then you see your calendar for the day. You see everything you have there for the day right from your home dashboard. If you're a student, you see your calendar for the day. You see everything you have for the day right there in your home dashboard. So you know what to do. And if you're a student preparing the night before, you can see a calendar and make sure you pack the bag for the right things, right? So things like that will pop up. You know, once you create the assignments and you start using the discussion board and you add the assessments, it's all inching you towards having your end of term report in there. But just like that, all the different pieces will come together as we use the system more and more. I see a lot of people adopting the system and doing a lot of things. And of course, right now we're at the point where we, you know, all the ambassadors are also working with the teachers at the school to get them. But these are things that you can use and show them and say, hey, this will make your life a lot easier. It will make processes smoother. It will make reporting to the ministry easier. It will make reporting, you know, generating reports for our students easier. It will make insights and tying things back to outcomes better and easier, and ideally in the long term really help, you know, teachers and students improve, right? So we're really looking forward to you guys taking advantage of everything. I'm going to stop sharing my screen now, and I look forward to seeing more questions, and I look forward to everybody working towards, you know, this goal of getting the country digitized and getting everybody using things. All right, thanks again for joining me for the webinar so far, and we will share the webinar links obviously in our group chat, and there's the YouTube channel, so they'll be on the YouTube channel as well. You can follow along with them, and yeah, as things come up, we'll do some more webinars. I mentioned that we'll share a feedback form. Jamie, I don't know if you're there. No, I think Jamie had to drop. Yeah, so Jamie wouldn't be sharing the feedback form here, but what we'll do is we'll share it in the chat after the fact, and you guys can give us a little insight as to what to look at next, right? It's a lot of information that we gave over a few days and then the previous training session, but the good news is that you'll have the recording, so you'll be able to watch along and you'll be able to follow at your own pace and ask questions and reach out and move things along as soon as you need to, right? So thanks again, everybody. Have a good day, and I'll see you over in the chat.